Welcome to Forward Progress, powered by Betfred Sportsbook here on the Hammer Betting Network. If you're in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and now licensed sportsbook in Nevada as well, be sure to check out Betfred Sportsbook. I often preach the value of line shopping. I think that's extremely important. Betfred is a sportsbook where you're often going to find the best number in market. Make sure that it is part of your sportsbook portfolio. Welcome back in here to Forward Progress. As usual, if you're watching on YouTube, I do see your comments in real time. Please join the conversation. I'll get to as many comments as I can today, and I'll even bounce some of those off of our guests who will be joining me here very shortly. If you're watching on Twitter, thank you very much for the support. I cannot see your comments in real time. Jump over to the Forward Progress channel on YouTube if you want to get in on the conversation, ask any questions, participate in the discussion as the show goes on today. Today's show, Championship Sunday, mainly props. We'll also talk about the games as well. For those of you who missed the Wednesday episode with Joe Osborne and Suma and Eric Eager, be sure to check that out. We covered the entire game breakdowns in those. But Eagles, Niners, Chiefs, Bengals, lots of talking points that we're going to go over. I'll be joined by pro sports bettor Hitman here very shortly. NFL writer for The Athletic and part of the Mayo Media Network, John Laghezza. For those of you who watched the Pizza Buffet here on Forward Progress last week, John Laghezza joined me, did a great job of breaking down the 4 games last weekend. And then finally, hopefully, we will close out the show today with a man of the people. At least he claims to be a man of the people. He hides behind an alias that he stole from Rounders. But Joey Knish will join me towards the end of the show. I'm going to bring in Hitman here in 1 second. If you do find value in the show today, please hit that subscribe button on the Forward Progress YouTube channel. If you want to turn off notifications, you can, but every subscription helps for us in growing and monetizing this channel. At the very least, hit the thumbs up button if you do enjoy the content. Let's get right into it. Tons to go over. Hitman joins me here on Forward Progress. Hitman, what's going on?
How you doing? Nice to be on again.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I mean, it's dealing with the winter. You know how it is, man. Like these winter storms. You're on the east coast of the U.S. Southern Canada, disaster as well. It's pretty cool.
We haven't had snow all season, so that's been good. The weather has been pretty good, like as far as temperatures going. Been getting some golf in during this winter. And then as soon as football ends, I go to Vegas for a week and get a nice little vacation. And then I going to be in Florida a few weeks later. So got a lot of warm weather on the horizon, hopefully.
So this vacation post Super Bowl to Vegas, what does that look like? Is that are you not betting during that time, or is?
No, I'm always betting, but there's times that you could bet on your phone, obviously, and you're getting less done when you're on your phone. You got to log in to accounts by accounts, whereas like on your computer browser, it's just a lot more convenient. You could get more work done. But I'm always betting, but it's just a matter of not grinding 7, 8, 9 hours in front of the computer. Whereas you it's kind of like for a normal job, it's like you're on call,
Yeah.
instead of just working nonstop. So looking forward to it. Been a long 6 months.
Yep. I mean, I would be right there with you. I mean, Vegas sounds not too bad post Super Bowl, to be honest with you. I was thinking about going
Come
south.
out.
Yeah.
I'll get you in the Las Vegas Country Club. My one of my best friends is a member there. We'll get you out. We'll get some good golf in. We'll eat at some good restaurants. Come on, man. You gotta enjoy life after the season. I know you've been grinding for 6 months.
All right, we'll talk. We'll talk off air afterwards. But it's sounding more and more appealing. Yeah, I was gonna head down to Aruba or something like that. Just like all inclusive, relax. I need the break, man. This football season, I love it. I live for it. People don't think I'm complaining about it. I wouldn't trade football season for anything, really. But you get towards, the last couple of weeks of the season, and you're like, fuck, I put in a lot of work over the course of
Baha Mar in the Bahamas. Best retreat to get away for a little while.
That is a beauty spot for sure. All right, Hitman, I want to get into the games with you this weekend. The big one, or listen, both games are massively, like, obviously winners going to the Super Bowl. Don't want to diminish the quality of one over the other, but we've seen a lot of interesting line movement from the Chiefs-Bengals game over the course of the week, with where we opened, all the immediate money on the Bengals, the money coming back in on the Chiefs as Patrick Mahomes first took the press conference without a walking boot and then practiced for 2 days in a row. Even did a spin, like a backwards spin in practice yesterday, which a lot of people were pointing to. Curious if you ended up playing anything in Kansas City and Cincinnati here, or if you would advise still playing the game right now. Basically, the market's kind of moved out to -1.5. Kansas City, total at 48 at our show sponsor, Betfred, as well. Just handicap of the game, anything that you might like from the side and total here.
You know how it is, Rob, as a pro bettor. A lot of times, like, you're very numb to results. Like, there's not many games that you could have like enough on that really like will get you into the game, maybe get you a little nervous while the game's going on, you're watching it. But this Chiefs game is going to be one of them for me, where I'm going to be really in tune to what's going on. And I have a lot of exposure on a lot of correlated markets in this one. I bet the over 47, pretty big in this game. I bet the Chiefs on the spread when they were very small dogs. I bet some teasers involving the Chiefs getting in the 7.5 from San Fran. And I am on Patrick Mahomes overs across the board. I played Mahomes over 1.5 pass touchdowns in the -155-ish range. The over pass yards I was playing early. The over completions I was playing early. For me, it's pretty much a handicap that, from what I'm hearing and what I believe, I think Mahomes is a lot closer to 100% than the initial market believed. Because, Rob, you probably agree. What do you think if Mahomes was 100%, this spread would have been? I'd say 3.5 to 4. It probably would have closed.
So, like, we have a very recent example of these teams playing at the beginning of December, and the Chiefs closed -2.5 at the Bengals in that game on the road. So it's definitely on the other side of 3. I think probably KC -4 at home is what I would make the number.
Yeah, so we have that, and then when it was +2.5, which is the floor of what it got to, it was like, are you basically saying Chad Henne's playing this game? Like, you're saying that the line has just moved so drastically that Mahomes really has to be ineffective for that to make any sense. And from what I believe that Mahomes is obviously not going to be 100%. He's going to be limited mobility-wise, but he's going to be closer to healthy, I think, than the market, even now, I think, is still indicating. So even at current market, I think that a lot of the Mahomes props still have some value. You're seeing his pass yards is as low as 282.5 at some places. And last week it was 310.5. 2 weeks ago, when they played the Raiders in that in the last game of the season, it closed 325.5 some spots. Mm-hmm. So you're really still getting a discount on Mahomes. I think you're going to get less rush attempts from him, which maybe that correlates to 1 or 2 more pass attempts that would have otherwise have been rush attempts for a guy that does look to run in high leverage spots. You're probably not going to see that as much. So, as I said, I think there's a downgrade to be made with Kansas City. I think there's a downgrade to be made with Patrick Mahomes. But I think that the downgrade being made is too much, even at this point as we talk on Friday. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs line closes -2.5, personally. So I think even at -1 on this game, that I still think that Kansas City is the side that I would play.
Fair enough. Just curious, in terms of the Mahomes overs, if you had to give one look, like whether that's completions, passing attempts, yardage, touchdown passes, if you had to just pick one of the bunch, what would you say you're the most confident in of all those Mahomes overs?
The one that was my favorite was the 24.5 completions in comparison to the yards in the high 270s range. And the reason that I went towards completions more as my favorite is because because Mahomes, you could theoretically see a situation where he's throwing more screens, he's throwing more short passes. So I thought that the injury correlated a little bit more towards the completions. But I mean, I'm looking at the odds screen you're showing right now, 24.5 minus 135, pass yards 281.5, 120. Just because of the vig, I would say that I would like the pass yards more because it still is a situation that I prefer to lay less vig
Mhm.
on Mahomes in this spot because there is a chance of a re-aggravation or something. You would even prefer sometimes some alternate numbers where you're getting plus money payouts more just because of the variance in his props. So I would say my favorite, looking at the odds right now, it would be Mahomes 281.5, the over.
So that number at Betfred is one of the best in market right now. Most of the passing yardage numbers have been adjusted up to 286 and a half, 288 and a half. So that is a pretty solid look, I would say, relative to the rest of the market. Just
Yep.
curious, want to get into your mindset, your headspace when you're watching this game. So you're watching Chiefs Bengals. You obviously invested in the Chiefs. You're invested in the over. You're invested in Patrick Mahomes overs. I'm sure you're going to be very interested in his first couple dropbacks, whether that's even to handing the ball off or passing the ball. I hope this isn't the scenario for you, but let's say he looks hobbled. He looks like he's struggling to hand the ball off or throw the ball. What do you do in the live market at that point? Are you trying to sell your positions as early as possible? Do you stick with your pregame read? I'm just curious because I think a lot of people are going to be in the same boat as you, that they tried to beat this number and now they got good numbers, but we still don't know what Mahomes is going to be. So what do you do in the live market if you're watching this game early?
Probably one of my biggest weaknesses, and all pros have weaknesses to their game, and it's important to acknowledge some of them. And one of my biggest weaknesses personally is a lot of times in live markets, I am stubborn where I don't want to jump off what my pre-flop opinion was, especially if it's a pick that I'm giving out to everybody and everything. I hate to then buy back on that position. Like sometimes where you could be buy back enough where you're rooting now for like the other side. Like you could buy back enough theoretically where you're like, all right, I'm rooting for the Bengals now. So it's something that I've been stubborn with in the past, but this is the ultimate game that you cannot be stubborn with your pre-flop opinions. This game is a game that you're going to learn more about Patrick Mahomes in the first 10 minutes than probably any type of information could tell you. So I think if there's ever a game that's a better needs to watch the first 2-3 drives, and then maybe they try to formulate their opinion because a lot of times the in-play markets aren't going to adjust to, Patrick Mahomes looks a little bit hobbled. Usually they'll adjust to like, Mahomes has gone to the injury tent or something, but just him not looking 100%. A lot of times they don't adjust to that stuff, or at least they don't properly adjust. So I think that this is a great game for people to get involved with live and to try to formulate an opinion pretty quick and take advantage of that one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean that's personally the way that I'm playing this. I don't want to guess. I think there's a lot of uncertainty here, but yeah, I think this is a great like a live bettor's dream, essentially, where you could potentially have something completely different from what we had pre-flop in this game, as you mentioned. All right, San Fran and Philadelphia. The market's kind of held still on this game for the majority of the week. We're starting to get some books moving closer and closer to 3, but we do have like juice 2.5s across the board. Just curious on the main market handicap, and then we'll get into props. Anything on the main market here that you think is worthwhile, or is this a game that you think is too difficult?
Yeah, I don't got much. I mean, I played San Francisco in the teaser. That was more of I like the Kansas City side, and just it's a great way you're pairing them with an advantage teaser. So I didn't was not opposed to pairing San Fran and that type of in a teaser like that. If you like the Bengals, you could always. I think the line maybe closes 2.5. You could always tease San Fran with Cincinnati if that's the way you want to go at. And I would do it closer to post because I think that the market does continue to move a little bit towards the Chiefs. But that's a way that you could approach this game if you're looking at the Cincinnati side, tease them with San Fran. But I'll say if it gets to 3, then strong lean towards San Francisco. I already played a position on San Francisco plus 3.5 I don't know, like a very, very, very early number. It wasn't really available to many people. And I do have some futures on San Francisco, NFC, Super Bowl. I have no futures on Philly. And it's one of those, if I had an opinion where I liked Philly, I would play back on some San Francisco futures, but I'm kind of neutral on the game. So it's not big enough futures that I'm just going to go out of my way to hedge off of. So I'd probably just hold on to some of my San Francisco futures and just watch the game. Not really the strongest opinion at 2.5. If you're getting plus 120, 3 minus 120 on San Fran, that's definitely the direction I lean towards though.
For sure. I just want to let people know here that in terms of the why people should listen, like obviously I have Hitman on here. Hitman's a friend of mine. He makes a living betting, but gives out the Mahomes overs, and pretty much all the 281 and a halves, 282 and a halves get bet up while that happens. So there's definitely valuable information happening here in real time. And Seth does want to remind you, Hitman, that you got the 3.5 on the live stream offshore.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Yeah.
Which was the first number that came out, and you were like, no, this is not right. And absolutely was not the right number. So good reminder from people there. In terms of props for this game, people pay attention. You may not have you may have a few minutes to be able to get down here, but anything that stands out to you, 49ers, Eagles from a props perspective, any player you're targeting, whatever it is in the game, let the people know what you bet and what you think is still worth value.
So I would not bet this now. I would wait on this, but just keep an open eye for the 49ers injury report later in this game. Christian McCaffrey, there was a sharp group that gave out his under. Believe they got 60.5. It was as high as 62.5 at some points during this week on rush yards. And the attempts was also 14.5 at some points. That got bet down. At 57.5, which is current market, and I believe some spots at 13.5 carries. It's a play that I'm looking towards. Maybe I do add more to my portfolio on that, but I want to see the injury report on what's up with Elijah Mitchell, because obviously there's a big handicap right now for McCaffrey with his calf injury. And it was pretty alarming to me that he didn't get a lot of those carries at the end of that Dallas game when it was still a one-score game. And he was only playing a lot of true passing downs. So I am in on the McCaffrey unders where I'm looking towards those. But Elijah Mitchell hasn't practiced the last 2 days either. And if Elijah Mitchell gets... Can you still see me, Rob? Yep.
Yes, I got you back.
That's going to be a situation where McCaffrey's numbers are going to skyrocket if anything happens with Elijah Mitchell. So nothing that I would officially bet right now, but I think that it's just a situation for people to monitor. And I do like some McCaffrey unders, but I really want to be comfortable that Mitchell is good to go in this game.
Fair enough. That makes total sense. There's no sense in rushing to bet McCaffrey unders and then Mitchell getting ruled out, and all those numbers are just going to be much higher than that anyway. So, I think that's a good game plan for it. I'm very interested in how the backfield is going to play out for the 49ers as well. Like, they've seldom used Deebo Samuel in the backfield, but it feels like, and there's not a lot of books that are posting Deebo over rushing attempts or rushing yardage numbers right now, but it does feel like a game where they might start to put him in the backfield again with both running backs kind of dealing with something right now. I'm not sure if you agree with that or not, because it kind of really hasn't been their MO down the stretch, but...
You know what, Rob? I 1,000% agree with you. I think it's a great thought on your end, but there's just one issue, is that in the wild card game, we were betting Deebo over 13.5 rush yards. Right. Last week, we were betting Deebo over 14.5, 15.5 rush yards. Now we're at the point where we have to bet 20.5 on Deebo. And for a guy that, yes, he averages like 6 yards per carry throughout his career, but it's getting a little bit more. I just think that's out of range at that point. And the books did a good job. It wasn't bet up to that number. From what I got to see, it was more of an opener, was around 19.5, 20.5. So sometimes you just got to give the books credit and say, good job. And In the case of Deebo Samuel rushing, if it was 5 yards lower, I'd be all over it, but I'm probably not going to be on it at the current market.
Fair enough. So we'll stick with the Christian McCaffrey look in this game. Obviously, people monitor Elijah Mitchell on the injury report. Make sure that he's in if you do want to hit those Christian McCaffrey unders, because if he's out, then we're going to see a pretty big adjustment in market. Good luck with your bets, Hitman. Go Chiefs. Go over. I'm not invested in the game, so I'm just kind of on the sidelines waiting for that live bet to emerge one way or another. But, I mean, sounds like you're pretty invested, so hope all goes well. You don't want to be living out of your car going forwards, right? Doing the streams out of the car is fine, but living out of the car is a different story.
Yeah, I mean, I know one of your guys that's going to be on in like an hour, Knish. He probably has some experiences he could tell me with that. So if it ends up happening, I'll have to go to him for some advice, some life advice at that point.
Last question before you leave. I guess someone has over 50.5. They're wondering about how you would play McCaffrey in terms of like middling. Maybe you can just speak to general advice on middling props, because this one's a pretty large one, in my opinion. You have a winner on 51 to 57, decent probability of that happening. Curious what your thoughts are on middling props.
Middling anything, I say that there's only 2 times you do it. It's one where you have an uncomfortable amount and to what your bankroll is. That it's just, and then number 2 is that both sides have value. In the case of if you have a 57.5 and a 50.5, probably I would say that the true number, assuming now the Mitchell stuff could happen, and that under 57.5 is going to be a bad number. So that's the risk that you run with that. But I would say with current thought process on that, the number should probably be somewhere in the middle. So I would think that is a plus EV good middle.
Perfect. You heard it from the Hitman. Hitman, enjoy the games this weekend. Best of luck with all your bets, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Peace. That's the Hitman. Follow him on Twitter at Hitman428. He brings a lot of quality stuff to the table every week. As you can tell, talked about Mahomes' passing yardage when I brought him on here. Within 2 minutes, the entire market steamed to the over on Mahomes' passing yardage. Obviously valuable bets that he's given out on the show. For those that don't understand why, typically when the market moves like that, off of someone saying something publicly, the market respects what that person has to say. From Hitman, we go to a guest that I had on the pizza buffet last weekend. Was fantastic. He's an NFL writer for The Athletic. He's part of the Mayo Media Network. John Laghezza, a firecracker for sure. How are things going, John?
Fire-breathing dragon, more like it. Rob, I got to say, man, I felt such a connection to your audience after I got off. Man, it was a never-ending stream of, it was just great. It wasn't even just like compliments. It was like feedback and interaction and people kind of picking my brain and pulling threads. It was really cool. So, thank you to everybody that was digging it. Let's make some more beautiful music, as they say.
I think the one thing I'm really happy with about the community that we've built with the Hammer is that there's a lot of positivity in the space, which is nice, because I've done content before where there's a lot of negativity around things, people lose picks and so on and so forth, and you're never going to be able to avoid that in the space. But for all the viewership out there, I do appreciate that. For the listenership who listens to this in podcast form after the fact, it doesn't go unnoticed. So to hear you say that, John, I think is just a testament to what we've been able to build here at the Hammer Betting Network. But you did a great job, and you're exposed to a different audience now that just gets to see you for who you are, and you really break down the games well. So very happy to have you here. And I immediately want to start with Kansas City, Cincinnati, because we just had Hitman on. He talked about getting early numbers on Kansas City, the over in the game, Mahomes overs, because he thought that this whole injury situation was overblown. Now, I don't know if it's overblown or not, but there's definitely credence to that with the way that the market has moved back over the course of the week. And I know a lot of people just think that Mahomes is closer to 100% than he is to 0 this week, and have been targeting a lot of his overs. Would you echo that sentiment in terms of Mahomes being a guy that, like, we're seeing numbers that traditionally we don't see for Mahomes going into a playoff game?
Yeah, I mean, and it's understandable because we saw him, struggle to hand the ball off. And we also know sometimes that's the best the injury is going to look, right? Once it kind of settles, then the inflammation sets in. I was down a Mahomes, rabbit hole, and it turns out he trains on one leg and one foot and standing on one hand. He looked like the cat in the hat at one point, kind of throwing football. So I guess he's going to be fine, but I don't think there's anything wrong with looking for, positive steam for the Kansas City offense, right? On the year, number one in points per game, yards per play, EPA per play, drive distance, drive success rate, pass yards per game, YPA, and passing touchdowns. That's a pretty good collection right there. But we did see the weakness. And one of the things Cincinnati has shown us, Rob, this year is, and one of the reasons they're so hard to put your finger on what they've just done, right? A hockey thing for all the Canadians out there. You want to go to where the puck is going, right? Not where it's been. Cincinnati is A-OK making these very kind of extreme pivots, whether it be on offense or defense, depending on what they're going up against, right? We saw them struggle on the O-line early in the year, shift to pure shotgun. We've seen them play the Chiefs and start to drop 8. And that's not something that you see often. They did it against Mahomes in week 13. He really struggled. One of his worst games, 16 of 27, 223 at 1-0, 99 passer rating, 0.24 EPA. Though for a normal human, that'd be great. For Mahomes, it's not. And then, we saw them a bit limited. And where I want to go with this is, it is really about that injury. And I think this is going to explain the number, is the rush rate drop after the injury, right? 35% rate before the injury, what we expect. That popped up to 50% afterwards. And again, we just don't expect a balanced offense from the Chiefs. And they really haven't been that explosive on a per pass kind of basis. It's just a volume thing with them. So I do understand the pullback from the market, but I think the greater than sign should be great players in great spots doing great things, and us using, again, the largest sample. Also, to that point, getting behind these Kansas City pass play is the Cincinnati run D has been phenomenal. And it's very funny how the public kind of sinks its teeth into a narrative. They weren't good to start the year. So that's it. We're going to kind of we have a death grip on that as a public. This is not the case. Check it out. Run D for Cincinnati since week 9, top 10 in defensive EPA per rush, 88 rush yards a game, sub 4 yards per carry, sub 1.6 yards before contact per rush, and only one 20-yard rush in that span. So they've kind of turned themselves into a pass funnel. I mean, don't invite the Chiefs to pass. They have no problem with it. So where I was looking at is the Mahomes completions. I'm over 25.5. That was at standard juice. You probably could have gotten that a little bit lower early in the week. That's always going to be the lesson, people. We can only do our best, that we can do analyzing. But you really want to be early as far as props, right? If you're going to be over, you want to be early. If you're an under better, wait till the last minute, because props only seem to move in one direction, Rob. I'm telling you, if we would actually check the math on that, it feels like 99% of offensive props move up. Very few move down, sans news. So the other place I'd be looking is maybe McKinnon, where I think we've seen the Chiefs struggle with that kind of stretch run. Maybe they'll just expand the run game laterally through short passes. We've seen games where McKinnon pops off. I went to check that line, and this is funny. So here's another lesson. Again, me and Rob always simpatico with this stuff. 3.5 receptions for McKinnon was at minus 150. Whatever. We could talk about Kelly's stuff and how we value our own picks. I don't like to pay minus 150. I do think it's viable.
Right.
But the next level up, if you can shop around, and again, this is also very important for propping, shop around. My mama told me you better shop around. So 4 receptions at minus 150. Rob, check it out. 5 receptions at plus 150, 6 receptions at plus 309, 7 receptions at plus 675 now. While I wouldn't go beyond maybe a nickel 0.05 units on that last one, I do think there's a lot of love to be had for that next level, the 5 and 6. So I'm going to be looking for over Mahomes completions and then 5 and 6 receptions from McKinnon, which again, we don't need any yards attached to it. I think the yardage prop probably in the low 30s, and again, viable. We wanted it in the high 20s, something you and I spoke about last week. So I think there's love behind the Chiefs offense, providing we're being, let's say, a little bit picky, right? We want to be stringent as we get closer to game time.
For sure. Now, I really like the McKinnon over receptions look. I don't like the receiving yards look.
Right.
So for me, the Bengals have done very well in pass defense against running backs this year. They're number 2 DVOA against opposing running backs. I still think that's something the Chiefs will try to target, especially when you have a quarterback with limited mobility. Get the ball out of his hands quickly. If he's in trouble on a drop back, where do you think he's looking right away? It's going to be the outlets to running backs. So I like the look in terms of receptions. Receiving yards, I'm a little bit less bullish on overall. But I do think that this is not like a lot of things are baked into the price and baked into the Mahomes injury status this week. I'm not, again, you are paying vig, significant big on the 3.5 to go over, but it almost feels like this still should have been priced a little bit higher. Like, honestly, I was surprised when you messaged me before the show, quick looks, 3.5. I thought this would be a higher number just off the top of my head with the Mahomes injury situation. So I agree with that look. I think that's a pretty solid one.
Yeah, I'm all about the Chiefs' offense, again, in this kind of construct with what we know about the Bengals' defense. You know, the other side is probably a bit more tricky, right? Bengals offense, very good top 3 passing, bottom 5 rushing. This is year to date. However, Rob, again, you and I, something we talk about is kind of trajectory, right? So although we want to be looking at macro pictures, we do also want to look for the evolution of macro trends, right? And listen, football is just a game of small samples. We're never going to have 600 plate appearances like we do in baseball. So sometimes a 2-month sample with a large trajectory change is what we want. We saw that from Cincinnati. 2 major revelations. Again, very bright QB, good coaching staff. They figured out how to pass against the 2 high safeties. They also have figured out how to run from the shotgun. Again, the answer to that problem with the offensive line that everyone, right, is pretty much hip to. But we've seen those numbers really jump in the playoffs. Check it out. This is Bengals shotgun run offense. Talk about, right, I'm splitting the splits here. But 4.7 yards per carry, sub 2 before contact, sub 3 yards after contact, 40% success rate this regular season. In the playoffs, all that popped up above 5, above 2, above 3, respectively, 56% success rate, because we're seeing, again, the creativity in the offense using Jamar Chase in motion with the shotgun. What are you going to ignore him because you think they might run with Joe Mixon? That's always going to be, right, the suboptimal kind of theory for the offense. The thing, I mean, that the defense allows, right, the Joe Mixon run. He's not going to get you 20, but he is going to get you 4.5, 5 every single time. And I think that's what the Bengals now have shown, that that's your other option. Is if you don't want to follow Chase across the line, you're going to have to deal with Mixon's 5. And either way, that Bengal run game looking pretty good. Again, it's really a stylistic thing. It's like all of a sudden they are this like ground and pound A-gap run thing. That's not what this is. It's just creativity, knowing that they have other pieces to spread the defense. And again, something you speak about all the time, Rob. Sports, they're about spacing, right? That's another hockey thing.
Yep. Well, I mean, the Bengals early in the year were running Joe Burrow under center a lot. It wasn't working, right? Mixon is going for 1 to 2 yards at a time. He was getting sacked a whole lot, and they just figured out, let's put Burrow in the shotgun. Let's run out of shotgun. It's been much more effective since then. But on top of that, they've been able to get the ball out of Burrow's hands quickly. So, you know, look at what was effective for them last week against Buffalo, and it was just like death by 1,000 cuts, right? It wasn't like all these downfield bombs and huge passing plays. It was, we're going to take our 6-7 yards in the passing game. We're going to pick up our 4 or 5 yards on the ground, and obviously occasionally more than that as well. But I think that's what has made the Bengals offense effective in the latter half of the year. Joe Burrow takes 2.4 seconds to throw the ball. It's the second fastest in the entire league. And he has receivers that can win on the outside. Then you add in the threat of a running game out of shotgun as well. It's very difficult to defend. So, I mean, I see some matchup advantages for the Bengals on the board, across the board. I just don't know how I want to attack it from a player props perspective.
It's very, as far as the Bengals goes, it's very difficult. Now, if you want to assert Jamar Chase greater than sign everybody on earth, then that's fine. Like, I can get that, because we've also seen, again, great players in great spots doing great things. Teams being very focused. They want to, you know, like if you're a pitcher, you want to go out throwing your best pitch. Right. So if you want to tell me they're going to attack Chase the way we've seen, I think that's okay. Those numbers are all juiced. But I would say the disclaimer for Bengals prop people, I split this every way you can. And when you see even target shares, even A dots, the even distribution from Burrow, this is, I forget who was talking about this, but this is the shepherd and the sheep type of thing, right? We're not looking for the sheep in this situation. Not saying anything bad. I just mean, in a physical, like a literal sense. We want the shepherd, right? Because that's where the offense is going to go through Burrow. And we don't know exactly where else it's going to go, because he's going to take what the defense gives him. And again, the Chiefs play a lot of too high. So that doesn't really, it just gives you the option of what they allow underneath. So it's almost going to be a function of how the Bengals call the play. What I mean is, if you're going to run Chase very deep, he's not going to probably get a lot. If you see him run these kind of quick hooks that we saw against Baltimore, then he's going to get a very high, target share and maybe a lower lower yards than we expect. So it depends how you think they're going to play it. There's a case to be made for the receptions. There's a case to be made for the yards. Believe it or not, Rob, I don't think they both hit together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. I would agree with that. Like for me, I've seen a lot of Tyler Boyd love this week, and I get it because exactly what you just said, right? Like Burrow's kind of like an equal distributor. Boyd's numbers are really low. The only issue I have with that is Boyd's going to play in the slot. You'll probably see a lot of L'Jarius Sneed in the slot, who's been a very good slot cover corner this year. I kind of want whoever's going to be going up against Jalen Watson when they go into those nickel packages. And that probably is a T. Higgins thing, but I just don't love, like, I just don't see a valuable overbet on T. Higgins where his total passing yards are right now. I've just been struggling altogether with this game personally, John. And I mean, sometimes there's not a bet to be made, but with the Mahomes uncertainty, not knowing how the Bengals are going to attack offensively, this is just like, I'm going to live bet the shit out of this game, to be completely honest with you. Like, as soon as I see Mahomes take a couple of dropbacks and I have any general sense of what he looks like, there's going to be a bet to be made there. And frankly, if the Bengals get out, if the Chiefs offense gets off to a really good start here, we've seen the Bengals every single time these teams play, and not only against the Chiefs, but just in general, be able to really put on some second half adjustments and like limit the opposing offenses. So I think this is kind of a live better's dream game, but overall I've been struggling to find something.
When I end up pulling clumps of hair out, to me it usually is an under, because I'm so focused on, again, props, and a lot of times it's focused on the over, not just because it's sexy, right? That's what we're doing here. A lot of times that's the answer, and I think that's really what we might have seen. That Kansas City defense. Also, they're really not getting a lot of love. Top 3 in yards per play, yards per reception, last 8 in the regular season. So, again, you look at these kind of 2-month, 10-week samples of teams that have really improved. The Chiefs have not been a doormat. And if the offense, which without Tyreek Hill, is lacking that true explosiveness, right? They've still shown to be extremely efficient. I mean, they're like the Chiefs are just top 3 in everything. First downs per drive success. It's just unbelievable what they've been able to do losing a piece like that. But the one thing they have not been able to replace, Rob, is the 6-yard slant that goes 75 to the house. That is not really in the Chiefs' arsenal anymore, right? You get a couple 40-yard air yard shots at MVS, but even with that, they really haven't been very successful. He's been more a function of trying to stretch defenses to have them work underneath where they're so efficient. So this really could just be, to me, it feels like an under. I haven't mentioned it. I think Cincinnati wins in a close one. I think it's Cincinnati and the under. I actually don't think we see a lot of scoring tomorrow at all.
Yeah, I could totally see that. This is a good question here. If they don't need to spy Mahomes, would they spy running backs out of the backfield? So I'll let you go to this, John, and then I'll give my opinion on how I think the Bengals defense is going to play this.
I think you'd have to spy Mahomes even if he's on no legs. Like if he was pulling around one of those things with the wheels, like my dog used to have, you'd need to spy him. So yeah, I don't think you could take your attention away from him. Again, not that it's not like he was really ever a threat to be running 60 yards at a clip. He just kind of would take first downs. We also don't know if he's not going to do that, right? Don't pencil him in for under 1/2 of a yard is what I'm saying, right? Let's just back it up. If the guy's running around getting in full practices, it's possible, again, that he doesn't run for 40, but it's possible that he runs for 12 in 2 6-yard shots, in which case the defense is going to be watching him anyway. Yeah, I'm just not so sure that they're going to abandon a Patrick Mahomes-centric plan.
Yeah, and for me, this is kind of why I mentioned that I like McKinnon receptions over, but not the receiving yardage. I think there's going to be a lot of scenarios where Cincinnati just drops into coverage in this game, and it's just like keep stuff in front of us, make the tackle, make them work their way downfield, and especially in the running backs, if he's behind the line of scrimmage, they'll happily give him that reception, and then they'll get in there for the tackle. I think occasionally they send some blitzes and some weird looks to make sure Mahomes is, on his feet and so on and so forth. But I'm really interested in this. I think it's a fascinating game because if you're the Bengals, it's very difficult to prep for what's coming when you have no idea what's coming. But I'm really, really interested in this one. I'm also interested in the other game, 49ers and the Eagles.
Oh, yeah.
49ers, I mean, didn't play the greatest game last week, but still come out ahead of the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott, costly turnover in the red zone, really hurt them in that game. Overall, Brock Purdy, the first time, didn't look superb overall, or, showed some struggles against the pressure that he faced. I'm a little bit surprised. I mean, I'm the idiot, John, for expecting Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy to come out and try to attack the 49ers secondary. Instead, it's more handoffs to Zeke and going nowhere, long third down, so on and so forth. Yeah. I don't expect the Eagles to do that. Now, like the Eagles coaching staff this year has shown very much so that they go up against, formidable rush defenses. They'll pass the ball on them, so on and so forth. It's a much smarter coaching staff from a game planning perspective. You talked last week about the matchups that A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith would have against the Giants. I see very similar success in this game against the 49ers in that the 49ers just don't have two good cover corners. They have Trevarius Ward, who's been very good this year, but they have Diamador Lenoir on the other side, who has not been very good. And it feels like one of those two could have a really big game here.
Man, this is like strength on strength on strength clash of the Titans. Just quickly to San Francisco, and man, I just don't. I have the red and gold on, right? But I don't want to be nabbed as this Brock Purdy hater. It seems like anybody saying anything negative about him is this cause for concern, where he's been excellent given the circumstances. But again, let's be very real about that offense last week. I think the 49ers team we saw last week was the mirror. Like, I think that was the truth. I think that was what they are. And it's a fantastic defense. Creativity up to turn to a 12, personal talent, just everything, continuity, play calling, everything phenomenal, as good as it gets. The offense, though, again, those skill talent, right, at the five positions are turned also up to a 12. The quarterback it's not, and that's okay, right? Listen, this is like football analysis 101. How do you bother the QB? Is you kind of got to take him off his platform, right? You want to make him struggle a little bit. And I think that's what the Eagles are going to do. Top 5 year to date in hurries and pressure rate. And then Brock against pressure, 30 of 64, 421. But here's the thing, 5-1. So he's just been able to bail himself out. And again, yes, he did that. But the design does that, and I just don't feel like it's really sustainable against the highest quality defenses that are just not as easily beaten over the middle the way some of the people that the 49ers did it to. So against pressure, again, Brock, 47% completion, 88 passer rating, minus 21 EPA per dropback. These are not good. Talk about unsustainable. How about 7.8% TD per attempt, 1.4% interception per attempt? He's just had more. Listen, his interceptions have been dropped. Yeah. And if they weren't dropped, we'd be talking about something totally different, about still a very good player that's still going to be the starting quarterback. I don't want to be misframed, but we're talking about this is the apex here, right? And if he didn't have the apex and the Cowboys just let themselves again, very frustrating. That's another story. We can talk about that in the offseason. But for right now, I don't think that offense is going to be greater than the Eagles defense, which has been excellent. I know the 49er offense with McCaffrey has been really good, but again, I don't think that they've played a team like the Eagles, who again, once they went out, they were very active. We were talking about them as being one of the best teams in the league, and they went and they added Quinn and kind of shored up the run defense. Now, again, they're not elite against the run, but they are better than average against the run. And really that has shown. So I think the Eagles defense is going to show out, Rob. I think the Philly offense, we know it's very good when healthy. I'm not worried about Hurts anymore. And though the Niners defense is elite, elite, number 1 in points per game, EPA per play, drive success rate, they've turned themselves into a pass funnel because it's the run defense that's so very good. And if it wasn't for the Titans, they would be number 1 quite literally across the board. Surface stats, input stats, peripheral stats, imaginary stats, like anything you could possibly think of. So the way you can get to them is, through the air. 5 of the last 7 QBs they faced, including the playoffs, over 250 passing yards. 10 wide receivers this year have gone over 90 yards. Keep that in mind. They're also bottom 10 in 20-yard receptions since the bye. I was trying to split this, and again, Hurts kind of, not say he takes what the defense gives him. The Eagles are very good at moving these pieces around. So if you split this stuff, you'll see Brown and Smith are constantly swapping left and right. Smith in and out of the slot. It's like that cup game, from Times Square when I was little. So I think I'm with what we were talking about last week. Give me the Eagles receiving core as a bet itself, right? So if you have a unit, whatever your unit is, split that unit down the middle. We're going to put half on Devontae Smith. His alt receiving at plus 80 is at plus 158. We love that. And A.J. Brown is a touch higher. Plus 90 yards is plus 172. So the idea being, people, if you split the risk and we hit one, minimum 58% return on investment, quite sustainable. If we hit both, which again, 90 and 80, very doable, as good as the 49er D is. Again, you might see the Eagles, which they've also done that Bengal thing, Rob, like you were saying, be like the water, right? They showed us the Bruce Lee thing. They can beat you a few different ways. So it's possible the Eagles say, Miles Sanders up the A-gap, not today, and they're going to go to challenge the defense deep, stretch them with A.J. Brown, and then work Smith underneath. So we could see the three-man game we've seen and hit both of these. So I think that's where I'm at, is the Eagles reception props, even though I'm not really on an over, right? So I don't want to be incongruent. I like the Eagles reception props because I don't think there'll be anywhere to eat in the run game. But also I think the Eagles win, and it's another under on this one.
Yep. This kind of correlates to one of the props I played in the game. I played Miles Sanders under 53.5 rushing yards.
Yeah.
Which, listen, I just can't see it. You see, some coaches are just consistent with their approach of how they're going to approach games. Look at Todd Bowles, the way the Bucs played the Cowboys as well, right? And look at the Cowboys last week. Like
stubborn.
Yeah, they're just gonna. It's kind of like, we're gonna do our thing, and if we can't, then we don't deserve to win, type of game, right? Like, we're gonna impose our will. And the Eagles coaching staff, what I think they've done a great job of this year is like, no. We're going to game plan. This is where the team is weak, and we're going to kill them in this particular aspect of the game. And they've had huge offensive performances this year because of it. Like, obviously, they have a lot of talent, great offensive line, great receivers. Jalen Hurts is playing great. Yep. But I see this as a game where I think they're going to attack the secondary. I still think that Jarrett Stidham game for the Raiders, where Devontae Adams was running wild, Hunter Renfrow, like, that's kind of like the blueprint for how to beat the 49ers and how to score on them.
I think you make a great point there, because that's a very good mimic, right? Again, we talk about spacing. That's a very strong in and out game. Deep threat, very good slot receiver.
Right.
Very good. Remember, Hunter Renfrow was like a year removed from us thinking he was good, just downright phenomenal. So
the next
that's a great
Cup.
Pick.
People are calling him the next Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't just fantasy players. It was legit people in the space, cornerbacks included, saying he was one of the most impossible players to cover in a small space. So I think you make that's a great crossover. That's a great comp. And the Stidham model, who would have thought? Go figure, man.
Yeah. Can't believe he's the quarterback that had the most success against the 49ers. But I think that's the way that they're going to beat them. There's a couple people in the chat that did bring up some stuff re Purdy. Obviously, Steven here has noticed the amount of passes that the Seattle game in the first quarter was especially a rough one for sure. Good point here by Gil. Purdy's Pro Football Focus fumble grade 20 points higher under pressure than the next highest quarterback. That's 85 or more dropbacks. Could be luck, or he could be the best quarterback at protecting the ball. These type of fumble grades and stuff like that tend to be a product of luck, and eventually luck runs out.
Yeah, I would say we kind of laid out, whether it's luck or not, I hate to get into as much as there are numbers that are unsustainable, that if you keep going up with them, you're eventually going to hit it. And again, the TD rates, the interception rates, the turnover-worthy plays compared to the extreme yak gains, everything has gone their way. Literally everything has gone the 49ers' way. And again, some people would say you create your own luck. They're in a lot of positions to then capitalize on it, right? So this is not like, this is a bad team, Rob, backdooring in. Not the case. But, man, for an oblong ball that's supposed to bounce in every direction, it seemed to only go one way.
Yep, agreed. And Gil, again, same comment from Gil. Regression might be a better word than luck, which
is
right. Yeah, it's probably a better way to look at it. All right, John, appreciate you joining me before.
Man, that was great, dude.
Yeah, anything else that you want to hit on that? And if not, nothing. But I'll give you the floor if there's anything else that stands out to you that you wanted to touch on.
Yes, I love this. Thank you. The very last thing is be smart. Okay, these lines are extremely sharp. Don't think you're better than it, smarter than it. Don't IKB it. But also, do the math. Do the quick math. Line, the spread versus the money line. Today's a perfect example money line. I think I saw a minus 120, right, and a 2.5 spread. So when you see that, you got to automatically think that's the Eagles, or 2.5 point favorites, minus 120. The money line is minus 145.
Yep.
So that's $25 and 2.5 points. So pretty easy math. That's $10 a point. Don't pay that to cover. Take the money line. That's cheap. That's a great. In fact, the money line, right? That's what I'm trying to explain to people is the spread that we've all fallen in love with is a deal. It's an offer, and it's not standardized. That's the whole thing. Is NFL betting per point is not standardized. So just do the math on these things, and because the flip side would also be true. Plus 2.5, 100. This is the 49er side. Plus 125. I don't see value in betting the money line. In that case, for $10 a point, you take the point, right? Because in that case, you're being offered a point for $10. We want it. In the other case, they're asking you if you want a point. If you want it for 10, no. I'll decline that and take the money line. Because I'd rather be more in line, Rob, with what the coaches are trying to do, which is win the game. Because 2-point conversions, missed extra points, all of a sudden spreads are kind of wonky. So, again, I just do the math, line versus spread. And it's been very beneficial for me in NFL betting because, again, what's a 1-point spread? It's a tie game pretty much, right? It's an even pick.
Well, this started for me a couple years ago when what's now the pizza buffet was just the Rob Pizzola Periscope a couple years ago. And I started betting teams plus 2.5. And people, in certain situations would be like, well, why are you doing that? And so on and so forth. And it's because the game is evolving. Teams are, the kick is further back. You get way more games that land on 1 or 2. So I think that's really good advice. Like, you're right. The standard NFL bet is the point spread. And people always want to bet the spread, but there's alternatives to the spread. You don't have to bet the spread. You can look for alternate lines if that works better in your favor. You could sell points. You could take a team plus 2.5 and sell them to minus 2.5 if you think it's worth it. There's lots of different ways to bet it. So I think that's a very valuable piece of advice, John.
Appreciate it, man. To that point, buying a point in the book usually going to cost you $30.
Right.
So when they're offering you 10, why wouldn't you take it? And there's your answer, right? How does the book value the point?
Yep.
Well, ask them, shift your point and see how much they move it. I bet you they move it more than 10.
Yep.
So there's an inherent, it's funny, it's an inherent injustice if you step on the rake, but there's an inherent justice to be had, right? There's some value to be had. And it's partly why we don't hear a lot of talk on money lines. You don't hear that. The book wants you at minus 110. Just keep it balanced. No one gets destroyed.
Yep, absolutely. His name is John Laghezza. You can follow him on Twitter at John Laghezza. Does great work for The Athletic. You can catch him over at Mayo Media Network as well on YouTube. Really good stuff, John.
Enjoy the games,
Appreciate
Rob.
it. Enjoy the games. Have a good weekend, man.
Peace, man.
It's John Laghezza. Definitely check out his stuff. I love talking to the guy. Different perspective on things, certainly. I think more people would be better suited to think in that way. We do see Drew Dinsick, the whale capper, think like this as well, selling points, different types of bets that can make you money, but it doesn't always have to be the point spread. You can look for different things altogether, so on and so forth. This funny comment. Can we get a board games power ranking? One day I will. Obviously, from behind me, I do play a lot of board games, lots of co-op games specifically. One day I will put out some sort of rankings. All depends on what you're looking for, to each their own. Joey Knish will not join us today. He has, I think he had to go to Costco with his wife or something along those lines. She was giving him a lot of grief, needed to make a Costco trip. Girlfriend, wife, fiance, whatever. I don't know what's going on in his life, but he's at Costco right now. Not going to be able to join us for the show today, which is honestly, for the viewership out there, I know some people would be disappointed, but you probably saved yourself some money if you were going to tail his picks today, as there's a very decent chance that the majority of the plays he was going to give out were going to lose. So did you a favor by doing the Costco trip midday today, but he's out. Recap of the show really quickly. Got to get those wholesale prices, losing all them bets. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not the only one that's noticing this now, Hit the Books was obviously carried by Brad Powers this year. We all know it, but so on and so forth. Yeah, my turn to give us some picks. Okay, I still like the Miles Sanders unders. So the market hasn't moved a whole lot, so I have no problem giving this one out specifically, but just across the board, in terms of Miles Sanders rushing yardage, 50.5, 51.5 range over at Betfred. I think that's just a good look. I mean, I don't think the Eagles, even in a situation where they get out to an early lead, they're the type of team that stomps on another team's throat and continues to score. We saw this last week with the blowout against the Giants as well. Maybe I'm out to lunch here, but I feel like this is the way to attack in terms of this game. Also, I like George Kittle over on receiving yards, 46.5 receiving yards. Don't love the matchup for the 49ers corners against, wide receivers against these Eagles corners who do a very, very good job tackling in open space. So I like George Kittle. I think he's going to get lots of targets in this game. We've seen this be the postseason for the tight ends, whether that's first touchdown score, so on and so forth. But yeah, receiving yards at Betfred, over 45.5, minus 120. I think that's a really solid number, honestly. I think he's going to get the vast majority of targets. And also, when you think about the fact that Brock Purdy is going to face a lot of pressure in this game, I do think that he's going to be looking to George Kittle over the middle of the field. In the Bengals-Chiefs game, I don't really want to give anything out that I'm not supremely confident in. I don't know that way this is going to play out in terms of this game overall. I've typically been betting Samaje Perine overs on receiving yardage in the past. I actually like the under on his receiving yardage in this game at 16.5. I do think that they're going to spread it out, get the ball out quickly like they did last week against Buffalo, but that's not a huge play for me. I don't think that that's a big edge altogether. So those are the ones that stand out. In terms of rushing attempts on Sanders, if you could still get 14.5, absolutely. I do like that under as well. That's going to do it for me here on Forward Progress, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Once again, make sure that Betfred, you check out Betfred if they are regulated in your state. Cannot advocate that enough. Thank them very much for sponsoring this content here on Forward Progress. I'm back on Sunday morning for the pizza buffet. So going back to the usual time, everyone who tuned in over the course of the year, 11 a.m. Eastern Time Sunday, the usual. I will break down the two games in full, give my final thoughts on anything, bets that I would still make at that current time. I will look at props again this week as well, just like I did last week with John Laghezza. So be sure to check that out. And if you haven't done so yet, like the content today, subscribe to the content. It's extremely important that you do that so we can continue producing this content for you going forwards. And you'll see stuff on the Forward Progress channel that, is pretty valuable. If you caught the Wednesday show, Joe Osborne, Eric Eager, Fabian Sommer, great breakdowns of the game altogether. We do a lot of great stuff here on Forward Progress. So make sure you subscribe. It's not intrusive in any way. You can turn off notifications on YouTube if you don't want to get them. But it's important in helping us grow our brand. Wishing everyone the best of luck. Enjoy the weekend. I'm back on Sunday here on Forward Progress, presented by Betfred here on the Hammer Betting Network.